knows the mystique, how mystical it is, the mystique involved in marching, where true father, true mother, as our parents, as our true parents. And we believe that the marching, there was some kind of mystical thing involved in it, in that marching. So, and we believed that so long as we were marched by true parents, God has chosen our spouses for us because God has walked through the true parents to match us. And now true parents say, we have to match our children. How are we going to do that? We don't have that kind of magic. We don't have that kind of spiritual power or spiritual insight to be able to find a spouse for our children. We were completely at a loss how to go about it. And but John is one of those who were very brave and really took the bull by the horn and went to do in-depth research about true parents' word and true parents' guidance how to go about marching. And he has been very, very, very resourceful to help us carry out these very, very fundamental, very basic, and very serious instructions given to us by true parents. So the mystique, how mystical it is, the mystique involved in marching, where true father. Oh, what's happening? My voice is being played back. Okay. All right. So yeah, so I really want to appreciate this opportunity, and I'm glad to see that the number of marching supporters have multiplied, and we have many more people involved in this process, and I'm very, very happy about it. Sharp, and I want to encourage everyone here, please let us pay attention to the lectures and presentation that will be given by our elder brother John here today, who is very, very experienced, and I'm confident to refer to him as an expert in this field. And so with this, on behalf of the regional president, I want to declare the workshop open. Thank you very much for the honor and for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Ogiorye, for the opening remarks. So now it is time to hear from our presenter. I hope that we are all ready to receive the content of his presentation. So let us receive him with a round of applause, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jinsong and Reverend Uguri. And I'm very humbled by your introduction. And I hope and I pray that God can speak and work through us today, that we can learn together and really come to understand God's heart, our Heavenly Parent's heart for our families, and how precious and how important this blessing is for our members. And I think we all know that it's overwhelmingly exciting, and what an opportunity, what a blessing we have, and what trust our Heavenly Parent has in us. So I hope that, having said that, that God can speak through me, and that each of your hearts can be touched. And I appreciate Reverend George's introduction, partly, well, for many reasons, but partly because he explained that we aren't as much matching advisors, in other words, advising what to do, as supporters, supporting the families and singles who are seeking the matching and the blessing. So when Father declared that parents would have to match their children, my wife and I panicked. So what Reverend Uguri said about not knowing what to do and knowing that we couldn't do it, that's very much where we were at. So it was 2010 that I first became a matching supporter, and we were advisors at that time, but now we've evolved the process quite significantly throughout the world, and we've learned a lot from each other. So I think that I hope and pray that what I have to offer today will move your heart, but will help you to understand perhaps and hopefully more clearly what we, or some of the ways that we can help our brothers and sisters, and especially our families. So let me begin the presentation. I hope you can see my screen okay. So this is called The Path to the Blessing, the matching process for families and all single members. Well, first of all, the matching process is the wrong name. We don't really match our children. It's a family supported process, and that will be the way I would like to present this morning. And this is the presentation that typically we offer for families and singles in the matching process. But I suggested to Reverend Wu Gray that you as matching supporters join this introductory session, because it gives you an idea of some ways that you can support families and what, at least in North America, we are offering and teaching. So I hope this can be really, really helpful for you. The family matching process and the first generation matching process. So we'll cover both of them in this process today, or in this presentation today. In the family matching process, the parents and the child work together to find the candidate's match. Single members whose parents are not active in our movement, so those could be blessed children or first generation whose parents are not active, work with a matching supporter who takes a parental role. So that ensures that we have a vertical process in this matching, what we call the matching. I prefer to call it finding my best friend or seeking my soulmate rather than matching, because the matching is, as I said, a little bit of a mistaken name. It's not quite accurate, is it? So I think you all know what I mean by that. But one really important thing now is that we are in the age of Chunoguk. This is the age when we want heaven to feel overwhelming joy. So our blessed children, especially in our first generation, who are beginning their family lives together, we want them to be overwhelmingly happy, completely victorious in every possible way. So this is not the age of indemnity. This is the age of Chunoguk, the age of heaven. So that's, I feel, very important to keep in mind as we support families in the matching process. So here are some notes for parents that you can pass on to them and that you hopefully can use to help to support and encourage them in the process. True parents gave the responsibility of matching their children to parents. So it's parents and family who have the responsibility. So when parents say, can you find a match for my son or daughter? I would encourage you to say, no, that's not my job. That's your responsibility, but I can support you. So people may suggest potential partners for the children of the pure water children that Mother calls our children, right? Pure water. Others can suggest potential partners, but only parents have the authority given by God and true parents. Authority given by God. And one of the things that we've learned through many difficult and painful experiences is that the candidate should have the final say. The candidate needs to take responsibility. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that as well through this program today. One of the quotes that I feel is so important, and this really inspired my wife and I as we were looking for the matchings and the partners for our precious children. Father said, "You may be thinking it is only Father who can do the matching, not us. However, that is not so. You are all able to do the matching because God, who is supporting me, is supporting you just the same." So I want you to encourage parents to keep that in mind, because this is really important. God has faith. True parents have faith and confidence in us in taking responsibility for our children. And one more quote from Father. When church members ask my wife's advice on raising their own children, she tells them, "Be patient and wait. The period when children wander is only temporary. No matter what they do, embrace them, love them, and wait for them. Children will always return to the love of their parents." So who was Father speaking about in this quote? Our true mother. So this is what our mother had, the encouragement and recommendation. And we have many blessed children. Many of our own children have wandered. Our responsibility is to love them endlessly, not lecture them, but love them, embrace them, be patient, and wait. They will always return to the love of their parents. So this is so important for us to have this kind of heart, especially as matching supporters. So the path to the blessing is, this is an educational program, and we'll outline some practical suggestions, but the most important point is always a vertical relationship with God. And one thing that sometimes we forget, I feel, our Heavenly Parent is desperate to be involved, desperate to be involved, because we need those, and God needs those heavenly families to build a world of peace and to be victorious. So this is a vertical, family supported process where parents and children work together to find their eternal mate for their sons and daughters. So one question some, especially new members, may ask is, why do we need a parent to establish a vertical relationship? And most of us understand this very clearly. First of all, it was God's original plan. Parents are in the position of God to their children. It's a vertical relationship, right? Parents and children. Secondly, God wants to be involved. Third, Adam and Eve made a connection with the archangel in the beginning of human history, and not with God. So we need to restore that. We need to connect vertically with God through a vertical relationship. And restoration requires a reversal of the fall back in the beginning of history. So these are some of the reasons that we need a vertical parental relationship. So parents and matching supporters are in that a position, in the vertical position. And it's important that we invest in the Jungsong conditions, encourage our families, parents to educate themselves and start really early to begin to understand the matching process and what are some of the best practices that we've learned over the years. It can be very helpful to understand the step-by-step process to support our families and to communicate well together. So communication obviously is very, very important. So parents and children communicating with the parents. It works both ways. So there are a lot of tools that we have available throughout the world now. As Reverend George pointed out, we have a large group of volunteers who are matching supporters, and they receive special training like this and ongoing training and refreshers. And this is important because our movement is evolving. thank God, right? We're moving forward in so many ways, and there are new guidelines that True Parents give us, that our mother is giving us ongoing. And so sometimes our processes change. So we need to have a communication and keeping in touch with each other. So our matching supporters should receive ongoing training and some refresher courses. So matching supporters are able to support families and candidates. So that's both blessed children and first generation, and also can be very helpful in international relationships. And that's a very important area that I feel matching supporters should be involved when there's an international potential matching or a relationship. And that can help to ensure that the processes are vertical and following the guidelines that come from True Parents. So we do have a matching handbook in North America, which is quite outdated. Some of you perhaps have seen it. It is available at the bfm.familyfed.org website, and there is a virtual copy. In other words, you can download it from that website. It's a very helpful tool, has a lot of tips. Even though it's outdated, the process and the basics are the same. It is being updated, and hopefully within a few months, we'll have a brand new version, which will be virtual, and you can download and access it then when it comes online. The matching handbook is not a rule book. It's not a list of rules. It's a guide. It provides recommendations and suggestions, and it's based on international matching guidelines, which come from the International BFD in Korea. It provides information and resources from experience in the matching process, a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that we did wrong early on, experiences of matching supporters, candidates, parents. So there has been a lot of input and research to help to put these handbooks together as a guide for our families. The bfm.familyfed.org website is available for you. You will need to register, and if you go to that website and you're not registered but you'd like to do that, go ahead and register. And if you're not approved, contact within a few days, contact your pastor or matching@unification.org, or contact me directly, and we'll ensure that you get approved. So in order to access that website, it is important that members are joining. And so everybody needs to be approved. So once you're there, subscribe to the USA BFM newsletter as an option. This is, of course, what we offer in North America. It's a weekly newsletter, and much of the time it has international events and activities that you can participate in. On that website are educational videos and a link to something called highnoon.org. Most of you are probably familiar with that. That is a member-supported website and program that helps to support sexual integrity. And later today, we'll see a video that they've produced talking about pornography and how important it is for us to ensure that we and our members have support in the sexual integrity. So that's what highnoon.org is. There is an educational website called MatchNet, which is we're going to be shutting it down, and it will be replaced with something else. And once that comes online, then you will also be able to access it. Matching education for candidates, parents, matching supporters, and pastors, that's available. It will be available through bfm.familyfed.org if you care to access it. And a lot of that some of it is specific to North America, but there are a lot of testimonies and a lot of guidelines there that can be helpful internationally. So BFD programs, DP presentations, preparing for the matching, preparing for the blessing. The more we learn, the more we understand, generally speaking, the more successful we can be, right? So there are two primary matching websites that we use throughout the world. Of course, you all are aware of Blessing for You. And then the second one is chunoguk.org, which is known as OMS, or the Online Matching System. And these are tools to help to reach other families and candidates. They're tools. They're helpful. They're not required, neither one of them, but they're very, very helpful as we reach out to find potential matching candidates for our children and for our first generation singles. A successful matching process requires these things, and it's very important that we keep all of this in mind. We, of course, love. The world is only going to be healed and restored with love, right? Unconditional, true love. We need lots of prayer, lots of investment. We have to persevere. We can never give up. And we need healthy communication. So these are like a pyramid, a foundation for the matching process and helping to build ongoing, deeper and more meaningful relationships. So here are some very important points that I hope you will be able to remember. Important point: unity, which is basically harmony within the family. So parents, children, between husband and wife especially, and that's one that's quite challenging sometimes, right? Sometimes our husbands and wives have not yet been able to work out the challenges and really become united, but it's very important that we all work on becoming and building a better relationships. And of course, the relationship and harmony between parents and their children who are young adults. For first generation singles, the candidate and the matching supporter, because the matching supporter then is in the vertical position. So for us as matching supporters and also as parents, it's important that we listen, learn to listen very carefully to our candidates. Of course, prayer, setting conditions, and never giving up. If we give up, we've lost, right? We've failed. But if we never give up, then God will work and we can be victorious. So the path to the blessing sometimes can be considered in 3 stages: formation, growth, and completion. We all know that God created everything in 3 stages. So preparation is the first stage. That's the foundation of formation to begin the process. Finding a candidate can be considered the growth stage, where we reach out and contact families and potential matching partners. And then the final stage is the completion stage, which is a conversation stage. And that hopefully then will lead to a commitment ceremony, preparing for the blessing, and then ultimately helping this wonderful couple now go to the blessing. So why is the blessing important? Just really quickly, I want to go through this because this is something that sometimes parents forget, and especially our candidates don't remember. They don't maybe really understand. So why can we claim that the blessing is different from a marriage ceremony where couples pledge to love each other faithfully? Is the blessing only about the ceremony and tradition? Aren't most marriages a permanent commitment under God? So especially our new members may ask these questions. So let's have a quick look at them. In the Bible, we talk about being the 3 blessings, right? The 3 great blessings: be fruitful, multiply, and subdue the creation. Striving for spiritual maturity, learning to love is the first one, to be fruitful. And then, of course, uniting with an eternal mate and having a beautiful, healthy family. And then that family is the foundation for a world of peace and love. So the marriage blessing, first of all, is God's effort to recreate the original quality of humankind. We were corrupted in the beginning of history, right? And so our challenge is to become a mature person, first of all, who lives guided by our conscience. In other words, be fruitful, the first blessing. Then unite in a holy marriage, which we call the blessing or the marriage blessing, and multiply holy families. And that becomes a foundation, of course, for world peace even. We know through teachings and history and experience that practicing higher standards of love, faith, and conscience shape who we are and are passed on to our lineage. We've talked about vitality elements, and we know that the human physical body requires air and sunlight, food and water to grow. And if we provide those things to a baby, we know that that baby will grow to become a physically mature individual. But our spirit body is different. Our spirit body requires life elements from God and vitality elements from the good deeds that we do in the physical world with our physical body. So you all know this. This is basic fundamental divine principle, but it's really important, I feel, for us to show our parents and especially candidates why the blessing is so important and why it can contribute to a better world and a healthy relationship in our marriages. So we inherit from our ancestors a legacy. Reverend Moon said, "You are here because of the merit of your ancestors." So not because I'm such a good guy, but because my ancestors did enough good deeds, built enough merit that I could inherit. They left a legacy that I could inherit. But Reverend Moon didn't create this idea, the lineage and legacy. That's not his original ideal. This is a historical concept. And the first place we see that is in the Jewish people, where Moses was called by God and given a vision in Exodus. So you can check that out in the Bible. So how we live our lives impacts our lineage, what we leave to our children, and our legacy, what we leave behind when we pass on into the spirit world. And there's a science called epigenetics that you may be aware of. If not, I encourage you to write it down or take a screenshot and research epigenetics. If you've ever known a set of identical twins, you might have been moved or struck by what they did not have in common. Maybe one was a skilled musician, the other couldn't carry a tune. Maybe one craved adventure while the other preferred the couch. Even two people who share the exact same DNA can differ substantially in their attributes. So epigenetics claims the choices we make can actually change our genes and those of our children. Epigenetics is based on the discovery that some of our genes turn on and off. They're activated or silenced based on interactions with our environment and the choices we make. And this means the way we live our lives affects our genes. So not just our spirit, but our genes. So we can conclude that our choices, the way we live our lives, makes a difference. And what we think about creates something called neural pathways in the brain. So our memories, our habits, the actions and activities we take are affected and create neural pathways in our brain. So where we focus our minds affects our life and our legacy and our lineage. But the good news is we can change our brains. So those of us who have bad habits, probably all of us, certainly myself, sometimes it's very difficult to change bad habits or addictions. And this is the reason why, because the neural pathways are created in the brain, and we need to take a lot of responsibility and work very hard to change our brain and to recreate the original ideal that God gave us. So our effort in life supports or detracts from God's effort to recreate the original quality of humankind. So the effort that we make is never wasted. Even if we suffer, if we can offer that to heaven, God can use that. So that's one reason why the blessing is so important. So number two, the blessing changes our lineage. And this is the point that we talk mostly about in our movement, changing the blood lineage, right? So back in the early history, God told the Israelites that he was going to create a new lineage of 3 generations. Through your descendants, I'm going to send the Messiah, and all the families of the world will be blessed in Genesis 22:18. Jesus told his disciples, eat my flesh and drink my blood. That's what Christians do when they take communion, right? So this is something that the Israelites, God told the Israelites, and God told them to really work hard and sacrifice, and that he really wanted to create a new lineage, 3 generations, a new lineage through the Israelites. They weren't completely successful, so 2,000 years later, Jesus came. God had to send Jesus as the Messiah, the only begotten Son. And then finally, because Jesus was unable to complete the mission and responsibility that he so desperately wanted to do, Reverend Mrs. Moon came as the Messiah. So we know all of this, and we know the story about Jesus is the only begotten Son. Mrs. Moon, our true mother, is the only begotten daughter. And this is something that is not, I mean, it's kind of new in some sense, but it's really important for us to understand. And so one of the reasons that it's important is because God explained to us, beginning with the Israelites, don't intermarry because I'm trying to create this new lineage. And so for us, when we have pure children, pure water, as our mother calls our children, born without original sin, the ideal is that they marry another child or blessed child who also is a blessed child. In other words, neither of them have original sin. So that's what this is all about. We really want to establish the ideal. So number 2, the blessing changes our lineage. That's the second point, and that's really important. So number 3, the value of the blessing helps us to create a family of love. And we know these are not laws or they are laws, but we need to take responsibility for them. And that's the only way that this can be successful, of course. So we know that something went wrong. The original ideal wasn't fulfilled. And we know that our ancestors failed. People became ungodlike. And the reason is because of self-centered love. We weren't thinking so much of others. We didn't connect with God in the beginning of human history. We connected with the archangel, right? So we all became self-centered. But there is a lot of research now that this American, I think he's an American or European anthropologist, Richard Heinberg, studied creation myths of all of the world's civilizations and realized that people became ungodlike. Things got confused, but all of these myths, all of them, religions and the myths of human history, evil had a specific cause. They all teach the same thing. Human nature has been distorted. There was some original mistake by our ancestors, and that has been passed on from generation to generation. Isn't that amazing? It's quite remarkable that this is what our true parents are teaching us and what we've inherited through history. It's been the same thing from all of these ideas and religions from human history. Quite remarkable. So every one of these stories, the creation myths that we referred to, had a test of responsibility, and in every story, human beings failed the test. In every story, the same problems: immorality, confusion between men and women, family breakdown, so much confusion in the world, and this is only a few of the challenges. So the solution is to reverse self-centered love. Easy, right? Just reverse self-centered love. Well, not necessarily so easy, but we're working on it. We're working on it. So point number 3, the value of the blessing helps us to create a family of love. And not just a family of love, but an eternal family of love. Christianity has contributed significantly to a better world. But when a couple gets married in the Christian tradition, they pledge to be united together until death do you part. In other words, in the physical realm. We, in our eternal blessing, commit to an eternal relationship. So when we go to the spirit world, we're together with our families on the other side. Amazing. So this is the third point in the value of the blessing. Number 4, God creates God-centered, to help us to create God-centered love. So not what I can get in my marriage, but what I can give. And that's why we encourage our singles to become mature and responsible individuals before they seek their eternal partner. So it's a process. We're working on it. We are all in process. The choices we make shape our legacy and affect our lineage. And this is really important for our young people, our singles, to understand. True parents came on the foundation of Judaism, Christianity, Mohammed and Buddha, saints and righteous men and women throughout history, right? They didn't just create all this stuff. They came on that foundation. So in summary, the blessing helps us to create the original quality of humankind, changes our blood lineage, helps us to create a family of love, and helps us to establish God-centered love. So those are the points that the blessing is extremely valuable to help to build a better world. So on the path to the blessing, preparation is the first step, the formation stage, and it is one of the most important steps in the process. So let's have a look at some points. For parents, we encourage them to begin early in this process, and very often couples will say, well, when do we begin for the matching process for our children? And I think it's important that they understand that they are beginning as soon as they are blessed. Right away, they're blessed, and therefore they're preparing. And the reason is because they're building a harmonious and beautiful, loving relationship as a husband and wife, as a couple, even before they have children. Of course, making spiritual conditions, prayer, we know, and our true mother is emphasizing how important prayer is. Unity and harmony between husband and wife. So these are all points that our families, our couples can work on from the very beginning of their blessing. And when they have children, unity between parents and candidates. And the reason listen is emboldened in caps, capital letters, is because very often as parents, we have a hard time listening to our children, right? So this is one very important point, that we need to encourage parents to really listen carefully to our children, to their children, and for parents to demonstrate their love so their children can experience it. Telling them I love you is excellent, but being with them, having quality time, investing in them is so, so important, so that it's substantiated. Harmony between husband and wife. We want to encourage our couples to set an example that our children not only can see and experience, but will grow up in a beautiful, healthy, happy family. And if they need help, encourage them. A matching supporter can help. A pastor or an experienced and trained counselor can help with this. So for husbands and wives, as they prepare for the matching process for their sons and daughters, it's important that they clarify their own goals and priorities. What is important to them in the prospective match for their candidate? So character, of course, faith, purity, race, perhaps, nationality, culture, backgrounds. These may be points that couples and parents are really concerned about. So as they build a relationship with their adult children, these are points that they can express to them. But we encourage parents to be very sensitive and very respectful to their children, their adults, right? They're old enough to live on their own, to work and to take responsibility. And so it's important that parents really respect their adult children, appreciate them, work together to build a relationship of trust and honest communication. Respect your candidate's input throughout the entire process. Understand your candidate's goals and priorities and give them responsibility. Be aware of how mature they are, because our young people, all of us, mature at different rates, right? And give them ownership of the final matching decision. So these are important points for us to point out to our parents and encourage them to be aware of. It's important to be sensitive to the child's desired degree of involvement in the process. And you all know already that some young men and women will just say, Mom and Dad, you do it. Papa and Oma, you find somebody and I will accept your recommendation. That's okay. It's beautiful if a child has such faith in their parent. But it's also important that the child is encouraged to take responsibility, to really make the commitment that they are going to make it work. So some children want to find their own match, their own spouse, and we can work with them to ensure that it is a vertical process. So our children, each one, will have a unique desire and intent and hope as far as finding their eternal match or their eternal mate is concerned. So as parents, we can ask important questions to find out what's important to our sons and daughters. And there is something called a matching plan worksheet that is available that can be very helpful in this process. It can help parents and children communicate more clearly and to help them understand what is important to me as an individual, what is important to me as a parent, and what is important for you as a matching supporter when you're supporting a family or when you're supporting a first generation candidate in the position of a blessing parent, essentially, right? Your matching supporter will become essentially a parent in the parental responsibility, the relationship in supporting first generation. So that matching plan we'll look at later. It's a really good, helpful tool that you can use. So parents and candidates, it's important to understand what is important to your son or daughter. Help your candidate to connect, model listening, honesty, and trust, and recognize any attempts that candidates make. So when a son or daughter comes to mom or dad and wants to talk, it's very important to be there, to listen really carefully, to focus and listen to what it is that they want to discuss. So it might be about the matching, it could be about school or a problem that they're having. But relationship, communication is so important to build trust, and we must be completely honest with our children. So for parents, it's important that they don't just assume that their children have not been exposed to pornography or other issues at church. In North America, I don't know about Africa, but in North America, they're teaching so many terrible things in schools that our children are causing. It's causing a lot of confusion. So it's important as parents that we connect with our sons and daughters and really come to understand any confusion or any questions, any misunderstanding, any wrong concepts that they are being taught. So, I want you to encourage parents to build this kind of relationship. Ask open-ended questions without judgment. So never judge. So if a son or daughter comes and confesses something they've done wrong, it's so important to receive, to be there with an open heart. Of course, we will be disappointed as parents if our sons and daughters have made mistakes or gone a wrong direction. But it's so important that we're there to support them and love them unconditionally so that they can come to us with any problem. So as matching supporters, this is one important thing for you to encourage in parents and parent-child relationships. If communication gets strained, sometimes a matching supporter can help. Sometimes a pastor, you may want to refer them to a pastor or even a professional counselor. So these are important points in building a relationship. And also, if there is a sexual integrity issue, or especially pornography, highnoon.org that I mentioned earlier can be very, very helpful. As you know, it's an international organization, and right now some of the leaders of High Noon are in South America, visiting various countries and cities and families in South America, encouraging and supporting sexual integrity. So how about a young couple who just has young children who may be 6 or 8 or 10 years old or 12 or so these are some points that can be really helpful in preparing younger children for the matching and blessing. Love and harmony between husband and wife, talked about that a bit, I mentioned it. When children are growing up, it's important that they know unconditionally that they are loved, right? And so we must demonstrate our love, do activities with them, spend time with them, go for walks, do whatever is necessary to have quality time to invest in our children. Hundake and Anchi-il are really important traditions that our true parents have asked us to fulfill and can be very helpful for our children to understand and to keep doing when they become mature or on their own. The love languages can be helpful because those love languages, if you're not familiar with them, I encourage you to research 5 love languages. That's number 5. And that can help us to give love in a way that our children can receive it. So if we can understand what their love language is and what our own love language is, and especially between couples, if you don't know what your spouse's love language is, I encourage you to find out right away, because it will make a big difference in your relationship, the way you love and embrace your spouse. And listening is one way to love your children, one way to love your spouse, one way to show your love, to demonstrate your love. Just learning to listen. Try it. It's profound. It's really, really amazing. So I encourage Hundake to be fun, not painful. Don't make the 5-year-old sit through 1 hour of Hundake, right? Give them a reward, but keep them in mind and in heart, and understand what it is appropriate for them to receive, so that they don't get alienated, they don't get scared or hate it because they have to sit through something to them that could be quite boring. So make it fun for them and encourage them. And remember that one of the things now in this age of Chunilguk that God really needs is happy blessings. This is so important. And it's very important, I feel, that we work on that we really work on becoming healthy, happy, wholesome, beautiful families. So very often parents and candidates will ask you, how do I know if I'm ready? How do I know if my son or daughter is ready for this process to begin? It's not just a question of age, is it? So here are some things that can help candidates understand where they're at in their own preparation for this process. So they can work on a matching plan, which I mentioned earlier. They can also work on a matching profile. They can go to Blessing for You or OMS or both, and they can work on a matching profile. That doesn't mean that they're ready to be matched, but there are questions there, and by making the investment, it can give them some kind of idea of where they're at in the matching, in their heart, internally, in their preparation, so they can work to become a candidate, fulfilling the responsibilities that are asked for in order to be prepared for the matching and the blessing. They can complete a blessing education program, and in Africa it's 21 days, so they can participate in that, and that can help them to understand, oh yeah, this is something that I really need. I'm not quite ready yet, or I'm really ready. So whatever, that kind of education can be very helpful. And of course, reading information, the matching handbook, True Parents Words, those things all can be very helpful. And here are some questions for candidates that are very important for them for self-reflection. Do you own your faith? A person can't just receive their faith. They really need to own it. They need to take responsibility for it. So as a person grows and matures, it's important that we encourage them to take responsibility for their faith. So are you secure in who you are? Or do you have some issues that you need to work on so that you can be confident in who you are, that you're God's son or God's daughter? Do you have a career path and personal goals? So those are kind of external things, right? Do you have a career path? Can you offer meaningful conditions of faith? So these are questions, kind of evaluation questions that candidates can ask. And here are some things for them to work on. Character development and spiritual life. We're all working on that, right? Don't have to be single or young for that one. Self-discipline, addictions, or bad habits. It's important that we work on overcoming those, or at least getting them under control. Uniting with our parents or a matching supporter or pastor or brothers and sisters or families and spiritual family. Divine principle education, understanding the meaning and the value of the blessing. So these are all points for candidates to work on, and they're ongoing. Divine principle, understanding who are true parents and the meaning and the value of the blessing. Autobiographies of true parents, the DP workshops. Let's Study DP is a series of recordings by one of our teachers in North America. And it's a very, very good systematic progression, which can be helpful, by the way, for Christians. So people who have a religious or especially Christian background can benefit from this letsstudydp.com. 2 S's, Let's Study DP. Daily Hunduke, and there's something called Godable, where they will send out an email every day with words. Right now, they're talking about, they're quoting speeches from Hyojin when he was in the physical world. So that's godable.org, and you can subscribe to that for free. GPA, CARP, other programs. Of course, I know Africa has many, many beautiful young men and women in Korea that go to Korea to study at Sun Moon and other places, and missionaries around the world. Small group study of divine principle with peers, and just learning and studying the divine principle and True Parents Words can be really, really helpful. And blessing education, becoming the right person, learning how to be mature and responsible, and then preparing for marriage, and finally, as a couple, growing as a couple. So those are 3 areas of blessing education that are important. So to become a couple to become a candidate in Africa, an individual should complete the purity interview. So contact the BF, you know all this already. Contact the BFD and arrange for a purity interview. The blessing education is 21 days. So each of you will be aware of and familiar with those workshops. 3 days of fasting. The international guideline for fasting is first generation to do 3 days. It used to be 7, right? And for blessed children, internationally, it's optional. It could be that it's required in Africa, but I know many of our young people fast for 7 days, sometimes even more, as we used to do, right? When we were preparing and setting conditions to receive the blessing. Medical tests are important. And hopefully, especially first generation, but also blessed children can find 3 spiritual children. So that's really important. Those are the steps to become a candidate, and you probably are all familiar with those. Candidates also can prepare a matching plan and the candidate profile on one of the matching websites. So those are very helpful as far as preparation for the matching process. So once again, it's important for us to have happy families, just to really work to love and embrace and care for and support our families. Overwhelming joy, right? That's the ideal. So let's take a short break if that's okay. I think we have 10 minutes, I think, at this time. So if that's okay, we'll take a break now and then we'll come back in a few minutes.
Yes, thank you for this first presentation, Mr. John Abelset. Actually, the content is deep, and I hope our users are all satisfied. There are a lot to learn, and for the newly appointed matching supporters, I believe, and of course, a very good reminder for the elders. So we are all invited also to review this matching education program that is currently being broadcasted on the official BFD YouTube channel. So as he already said, we'll take a break from here and come back for the next presentation.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Perhaps we should begin again. We don't want to go too late today, right? So if everyone
Yes,
is,
actually, it's up to you,
yeah,
Mr.
okay,
John. If you're ready, let's go.
sure, okay, great. Everyone back? I hope that this is not too tedious, too boring, and that everybody is able to stay awake for most of this. If you catch a little snooze, Reverend George says it's okay. Good. Yeah, I know it can be a little bit tedious, a lot of talk, and maybe I need to make some jokes or something to keep people entertained a little bit. But there's a lot of important material, so I really hope that it's helpful. And after this next presentation, we can take questions. So hopefully that this is helpful. Okay, so the next point that I would like to introduce and to talk about is the matching plan. I've mentioned this a couple of times, and we've found over the years that this is a really excellent tool to help with the communication in the beginning of a process, or even a way to get the process started. Very often parents don't know where to begin. And this is one of the challenges that we face. How do you get started? What do you do? So this matching plan can be a very helpful tool. And one thing that I found in my own, we have 6 children. One of them is in Spirit World and was matched and blessed in Spirit World. But the others, we of course had to work together and figure out how to find their eternal partner for every one of them. So one of the techniques that that we evolved in connecting with our children was to say, so Peter, in the name of my youngest son, Peter, have you been thinking about the matching at all, the matching and blessing? So when he was maybe 21 or somewhere, 2021, somewhere in that age, we thought he could be ready, maybe not quite, but so we asked him, have you been thinking about the matching at all? Because his elder brothers and sisters were all blessed already, right? And so in the beginning, he said, no, nope, no, haven't really. So then change the topic. Don't talk about the matching and blessing. Don't try to convince, because it can be counterproductive. So this is what we've found. So the question, have you been thinking about it at all? No. Okay, change the topic and talk about school, talk about work, talk about their day-to-day act, something that they are interested in. And then 3 months, 4 months later, when you feel it's appropriate, have you been thinking about the matching process at all recently? No. Oh, okay. So how's school going? How are your hobbies? What are you doing these days? And then another 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. Have you been thinking about the matching or the blessing at all recently? Yeah, a little bit. Change the topic. It's not quite ready yet. So another 3 or 4 months, whatever goes by, and then ask one more time. And when they finally say, yeah, I've been thinking about it, then that can be a good time to talk with them about this process and what they want in a match, and introduce them to the matching plan worksheet. So you can print this out. It's on our website, and I think I can put a link in the chat later on in the program so that you can access this. And I do recommend it because it's not, there are a lot of questions there that can be that can help to introduce parents and a candidate and help them with communication. So it can help to bring unity and understanding between them. It can help with clear communication. And of course, parallel with this, it's important that God is involved. Parents, we will definitely involve God, right? But sometimes our children aren't as connected, shall we say, as we are. And I think it's important that we support them, understand them, try to understand where they are at in their life of faith, and not force them to do conditions that may be appropriate for us as parents. The internal character and match of the child of the match should be the first consideration, but the child, the son or daughter, it's so important that they internally are ready or preparing to move forward in the matching process. So in the matching plan, here are some things that are covered: created and recommended, encouraged. These are not rules. It's just, once again, they're guidelines. Create a matching team. So we've found very often that a team can be very helpful. So one of the things that we found a person was the siblings of our children, the elder siblings or whatever. So they were, sometimes our kids understand each other better than we do as parents, right? So siblings or a pastor, a matching supporter, friends from our movement can be good potential candidates for part of the team in the matching process. So these are some of the things that are outlined: exploring life goals and core values and characters. So when a child or a young man or woman fills this out, these are some of the questions that they're encouraged to consider. Identify areas that the candidate can work on in their habits, in their character. Identify deal breakers. So your son or daughter may require somebody who speaks French fluently or English fluently or a different language. That may be something that is required for them because they need that kind of quality, clear communication. So that could be a deal breaker if they don't speak the native language of that candidate. Consider important questions to ask a potential partner. Think about ideas of where to find potential candidates, and clarify the desired level of involvement of the candidate. With our younger daughter, it took us 6 years to find her match in 150 families. We reached out to families all over the world. Now, that was many years ago, but it was a bit of a challenge, but we didn't give up. And her involvement evolved over a period of time. So in the beginning, my wonderful wife and I found potential matching candidates for her. She had many beautiful conversations with young men that just didn't quite click. They just weren't quite, the chemistry wasn't there, however you want to put it. It just didn't resonate. So eventually, she wanted to see the profiles before we reached out to a candidate. That was great. After that, she said, okay, before I see the profiles of these young men, show them to my older sister. Let her look at them. And if she thinks that this person could be a good potential match for me, then you can show it to me and I'll make the final decision. So her involvement evolved over a period of time. And finally, because we didn't give up, and every week we went to the website and we found her eternal match is from Brazil. We lived in a small country, a small city in Canada, no members, no churches nearby. 5 hours was the closest one. We were completely isolated. But because of the matching website, we were able to find her match from Brazil. So no matter how isolated your members are, as long as they have Wi-Fi, hopefully, they will be able to access the matching website. And that's a great tool. And we'll talk more about that later. So one important point that the matching plan introduces is the possibility of deal breakers or red flags. So deal breaker means that they would have a really hard time building a loving relationship with a person who has one of these, could be an addiction. It might be that they're too involved in the church. They want to be a leader and they don't want to match who's going to be, or they're not involved enough. Perhaps they've had a sexual relationship outside of the church. They don't want children. These are all really important points for individuals, for our sons and daughters to consider what they could accept in a potential match and what would be very difficult. So when we say a red flag, that means it wouldn't necessarily mean it cannot happen, but it's something that we need to evaluate very carefully. So if there's a red flag, something that may need a little bit further investigation to see if it could work as far as a match is concerned, that's what we mean by a red flag. So I hope that's clear. In the matching plan, we encourage the candidates to take time and to really pray, really reflect. It shouldn't be something that is just done on the spur of the moment or sit down, have a cup of coffee and complete this form. They should really invest in it. And likewise for parents. So take your time, be honest, communicate constantly, ask questions, figure out how you're going to search, clarify each step. These are important parts of an investment in becoming prepared and in moving into a matching relationship. So it's important to keep an open mind. And sometimes our candidates are very rigid about what they will or will not accept in a potential match, right? So one thing that I hope that we can help them to do is to realize that God might have a different idea, a different plan for us than I understand or than our candidate understands. So encourage them to keep an open mind and realize that God will help them. God will give them input. Try not to have too many, especially external limitations, right? She has to be beautiful or whatever, whatever kind of thing. So it is important that we do our best to support individuals in preparing for this matching process. And one of the things that sometimes we hear from candidates and families, there's too much red tape. There's too many documents. There's too much. So my response to them is, are you an apprentice? Are you studying a trade? Are you working on a degree in college? And how many years will that take? And how much investment do you have to make to become a professional or to become an expert carpenter or a plumber or to learn your trade and to become really qualified? How much investment does that take? And usually it's 3 to 50 years, right? It can take a long time. Medical doctors have to study for a long time. My point is, the blessing is even more valuable than a degree or an apprenticeship or any. So to invest in that, an eternal relationship, take your time, invest, and really think that this is what God needs and what God wants for you and will help you to be eternally fulfilled and ecstatically joyful. That's our goal, right? So sometimes it can be helpful to put it into perspective for our young people so that they understand. Filling out a few forms, going to the doctor, having some interviews is not that difficult. 1 week and they can have it all done and be ready to move forward if that's where they're at in their lives. So once they've provided a foundation, they have realized that they're ready probably to move forward, at least to some degree. The next step is finding a candidate. So one of the first things as matching supporters, I encourage you to encourage parents to ask the candidate, first of all, do you have somebody that you feel could be a good match for you? Now, sometimes we feel that that's not vertical, that it should come from the parents or the pastor or somebody like that. But if a young man or woman feels an attraction or connection to somebody and they report it to their parents or to God and to God, I am absolutely certain that God would approve. If Adam and Eve had gone to God and said, hey, God, I'm attracted to Eve. I'm really attracted to her. What do I do? Wow, I would love to marry her. Wouldn't God say, Oh, okay. Well, here's what you do, and then we can talk about a relationship, building a relationship. So do this, do this, do this, like, right? So when a candidate has someone in their heart, someone they feel connected and attracted to, that's not necessarily wrong. It's also not necessarily their eternal mate, right? But if they report to their parents and or matching supporter, and the parent evaluates, contacts the other parent or the other matching supporter and finds out what is happening with that person, then that can be resolved. And candidates, you know, we encourage our kids to interact with each other, and it's very possible. Many, many matchings and ecstatically happy blessings come from this kind of relationship. So candidates' suggestions should be seriously considered. Parents, matching supporters, family and friends, matching convocations. I know Africa we have a convocation later this month, right? Or early July, I believe. Matching websites, participation in events. These are all places where a potential match can be found. And of course, the matching websites, of 5 of our children that we found matches for, 4 of them came from matching websites. So I know that they can be successful. They're not for everybody, but they can be really successful. There right now are about 14,000 candidates on Blessing for You. And all we need is 1 for each person, right? So there's lots of potential there. And OMS is an American hosted website which will allow especially first generation to search for their potential match. So I encourage candidates to have profiles on both of these websites. Why not? So in finding a candidate, there are some resources that are available, and Africa is hosting this PMC coming up soon. So there'll be lots of potential matches there. In North America, we have these Connect retreats that are virtual. We just had one 3 weeks ago, and we still have young men and women that are communicating with each other, and those are can be very, very successful. And matching supporters host matching meetings on a regular basis, 4 times a year for blessed children, and 4 times a year for first generation. And also, one of our members is organizing a special needs connection. So if you have sons and daughters who are special needs, they have some kind of a mental challenge, they might be schizophrenic or have learning disabilities, they too should be matched. And ideally, we can work together to find eternal matches for each one of those precious sons and daughters of God. So it's very important, of course, to maintain a vertical relationship. So parents and matching supporters, we need to continue to be connected in a vertical way to our candidates. Candidates have responsibility, and one of the things that we will talk about a little bit more tomorrow in the matching supporter training is that if a candidate is not taking responsibility, you cannot do more for them than they are doing for themselves. So candidates must take responsibility. They must continue to grow, study, and learn. We're still doing that, right? All of us. They should work on their education within the movement, and of course, training and the external job qualifications, etc. But mostly internally, they're internal and studying the divine principle, True Parents' words. It's important that candidates constantly communicate with their matching team. So whoever is on the team that they put together, it's important to communicate regularly and frequently. They should also create profiles on matching websites. And that's one thing that we found in the past that parents did for them. That's not good. Parents should not do it. You can work with your son or daughter, especially if they have trouble. My eldest son has some special needs, and for him to create a profile is very, very difficult. So I worked with him to put together a profile for him. but this is the candidate's responsibility. So communication, great profiles. Profiles should be up to date. They should do them over and over and over and over. Read them again and again and again. Every week is what I tell my candidates. You go to your website, go to your profile every week and update it. They never do it every week. Well, not very often, but at least once a month. So they should read through the text. They should update their photographs and be sure they're good quality photographs. So the two reasons why the profile should be up to date. One, of course, is because things change. A person might graduate from school and they need to update. Now they have a job, so that their profile therefore needs to reflect where they're at. But the other important thing, when they update their profile on Blessing for You, that profile goes to the very top of the list of the 14,000 candidates that are on Blessing for You, the very first one. So as matching supporters, it's important that we encourage our candidates to keep their profiles up to date so that they can be most visible in and have really good quality pictures. So I encourage you to look at your candidates' profiles and make suggestions to them. Last week, one of my wonderful ladies had a picture on her profile that was really not very flattering. And so I messaged her and said, please, can you change your picture? She did. And the one that's there now is excellent. So that's very important. Pictures mean a lot. So it's very important that pictures are kept up to date and the profile itself is kept up to date. Parents have responsibility as well in this process, we know, right? So they should search consistently, constantly reaching out, be determined, consistent, committed, use the matching plan that they and their son or daughter have created. That's their template. That's the guideline that they can use to find and understand the character of the person that they're looking for. Contacts pastors, spiritual parents, spiritual children in other countries even, or locally. Ask them all if they have potential matches for your son or daughter. And it's important to be sensitive about this search. Don't make it a public thing. Don't stand up in church and say, I'm looking for the match, because that can be a little bit embarrassing for our children. So it's very important that we're sensitive and ask the people we reach out to keep it confidential. If they have someone that they can recommend, excellent, but please don't just broadcast it. So it's important. So parents should communicate with matching supporters, check the websites weekly, never give up, never give up. Parents don't have the option to give up. God gave us that responsibility. So it's very important that we fulfill that responsibility. And one thing that I feel is so important for parents to understand is to never express their frustration in front of their children. They may be frustrated because they cannot find a match, but if they express that to their son or daughter, the child will feel horrible. They'll feel it's my fault. I'm a terrible person, or whatever they may feel. But it's very destructive for a parent to communicate their frustration, especially in the matching process, to their child. So please explain to your parents never to do that. Be really sensitive, loving, encouraging, and supportive of their candidates. That's so very important. So now the parents will say, okay, we found a candidate. What's next? Well, the first thing is to screen the potential candidate. Check that their core values and their goals match up, that their faith levels are parallel or similar, close enough so that they can be harmonious in their relationship. Consider potential red flags. Those are the things that could be unacceptable traits or backgrounds or habits that a potential match could have. Consider deal breakers. And church faith, level of faith, or sexual background, those kinds of things could be deal breakers. Language even, could be deal breakers. So it's important to be aware of them and to evaluate even before beginning a matching communication. Talk to advocates, pastors. If you're using OMS, if your candidate has a profile on OMS, there is an anonymous messaging system that parents and candidates can use to reach out to potential matches to ask sensitive questions. And they don't know who they're communicating with. Nobody knows the other person because it's all anonymous. So that can be really, really helpful. OMS, that's the online matching system at chunilguk.org. And of course, research on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X. I don't know what our young people use these days. LinkedIn. Lots of our young people are on LinkedIn and some of these other websites. So you can do the research. Parents can do the research and find out more background on each person. So when we found our Brazilian now son-in-law, my wife went to Facebook and saw on his Facebook page he had pictures of himself wearing this really ugly mask, covered his whole face. It wasn't just like the mask we used for COVID. It was a full face mask. It was terrible. We thought, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Oh, it turns out that he was to pay for his college. He was entertaining in nightclubs and he wore the mask to keep the girls away. So, what looked like a really ugly, awful picture or impression of him turned out to be very positive, exactly what we were. Anyway, they're very happily blessed and he's a very special young man. So do the research, and then when you find that this could be a good candidate, your team agrees, you're ready to reach out to the other parents or matching supporter and find out if they're interested. So contact the parents and ask, is your son or daughter available for a discussion? Please look at the profile of our child on the website and let us know what you think. And it could be helpful to reach out first to qualified candidates. So you may want to ask if they are a candidate. On Blessing for You, it states candidate or applicant, right? So you know right away. And I always encourage parents to begin with the qualified candidates. Singles who have invested in becoming candidates are likely most ready to begin a matching process. So begin with the qualified candidates and connect and communicate with other parents so that you can build a relationship, but also you can discuss your sons and daughter, your son and your or daughter with them, and compare where they're at in their lives so that you can kind of get an idea already. So ideally, parents can communicate with each other before they introduce their children to each other. So that's one option. It's we don't always have to follow, but these are guidelines that can be helpful. So, and now virtually, most of the time we can meet other parents virtually, right? Like we're meeting today. When you're looking at international matches, I really encourage a matching supporter to be part of this process, because you as matching supporters will have access to other matching supporters and BFD in other countries so that you can ensure that this person is qualified. And perhaps you can be there for translation, especially, if they're like Japanese, you have a Japanese candidate, or Korean, or for French, most of you speak French on this call, right? But so a matching supporter can be really helpful in facilitating communication. Discuss the customs, language differences, agree on the process. And by the process, generally I refer to what we've been recommending for many years, a 7-month communication process. We're going to talk more about that now coming up, but that's part of the process that is important. One really important note Some countries think, and some parents think, once two people begin a conversation, they are matched. In North America and in most parts of the world, that is not the case. They are getting to know each other, and they're going to decide whether or not they will become a couple. But so be aware of that, and really try to be clear wherever you're at. If the parents feel they begin a conversation, they're matched, that's up to them. We don't encourage that because we want them to get to know each other and to take responsibility as an individual in making the commitment to not only to their potential match, but to their match's family. So the process, how it works, is important for clarification. Consider where they will live and work. So if they have a bachelor's degree in South Africa or a doctorate from South Africa, like maybe they're a medical doctor and they took the training, can they go to Canada? Can they come here and practice medicine? Probably not without taking some upgraded courses, or France, or so those are really important, that they discuss as a couple, where will they live, and in conjunction with their education, who will be the breadwinner, who will earn a living. So, and we all know that long distance relationships can be a challenge. So those are just factors to evaluate. We really want to encourage international matchings, right? Of course. That's one way that True Parents pointed out that we can help to bring world peace more quickly. So it is really, really important. At the same time, there are practical realities that we want to point out to the families. And once again, not just on the day of the blessing do we want them to be ecstatically happy, but forever and ever and ever, right? So it's important that they build a foundation so that they can make an honest commitment to each other as a couple, and they will never give up, never break that blessing. So not just on the day of joy like this, but eternally. That's what we really want to encourage. So in communication, we encourage confidentiality. So if sons and daughters, children are in a conversation, we recommend keeping it as confidential as possible. The pastor should be aware, for sure. The matching team, of course, will be aware. The family will be. But in general, our church community, we're always concerned about our kids, right? So an aunt or an uncle comes up to your son or daughter and says, so how's the matching process? Are you guys going to the blessing now? And maybe last week that actual matching discussion ended. Maybe that son or daughter has a broken heart. They're really suffering. So that can be very painful for an aunt or uncle who has a good motivation, but didn't handle that question sensitively. So we just encourage keeping it confidential until it becomes a commitment to each other, just for the protection of our precious sons and daughters' hearts. So in communication, it's important to discuss the process and to be sure that everybody is in sync with how it's going to move forward. Avoid being intense or confrontational with other parents. We may not exactly get along with other parents, but we are brother and sister. We really need to have an open heart and grow and learn to love and embrace and build a relationship of trust and honest communication. And one important point is, don't rush the other family. Don't allow them to rush your family in the matching process. It's important that candidates take their time, whatever time it takes, to really build a relationship of trust. So this is not an exact science, right? It's not scientific. We have science research that has helped us and guided us in many ways, but it's important that we're open and flexible, and we do our best to support our candidates and evolve in a heavenly way that can build beautiful families. So I talked about 7 months of communication. We encourage beginning with 3 weeks, and this phase can be very casual. It can just be a few phone calls, but it can also be very helpful to start as friends. If our sons and daughters are thinking about matching, it can be confrontational. It can be nerve-wracking. You know that word, nerve-wracking? Anyway, so what we've found is that sometimes we can encourage them just to think about looking for your best friend, trying to find your best friend. So build a friendship as a brother and sister. Get to know each other. Be casual. Don't get too intense about this process. So we encourage the first period of 3 weeks, 21 days, more or less. And they can communicate as much as they want and take the time to get to know each other in a fairly casual way. So they can talk about their family, their education, their goals in life, etc. And the goal of the first 3 weeks, first 21 days, is to determine if they want to go into a communication phase. So sometimes they may want to meet in this time to get together physically, and that might be okay, but I generally recommend that they get to know each other a little bit more. If they know each other, they're in the same community, obviously they're going to be having time together. But if they're in a different country or different city, then they may want to wait until they're more confident that their relationship is going to continue to grow and to become substantial before they actually take the time to meet with each other. So the first meeting, when they finally do meet, should be quite short. I know if they're traveling from Africa to America or South America or anywhere, it's expensive to travel, right? So 3 or 4 days is maybe a little bit short, but if that first meeting is painful and miserable, and it could be, it happens, then they want to know, but they don't want to have to spend 2 weeks together with this other person. If it's joyful and ecstatic and it's just beautiful, then they'll look forward to the next time they can meet and get together. So encourage just a short introduction. The first time they meet, just short, just 2 or 3 or maybe 4 days. And in the meantime, they should change their profile to in communication so other families know that they're not available, or they can just put it on hold. So if they decide they want to continue, they can move into a communication phase, which is what we can call a courtship. It's an intentional time as a brother and sister to decide whether or not to become betrothed, whether or not to make a commitment to each other. And once again, this can still be considered a friendship. They're building a friendship, so it doesn't get too intense. But there are relationship building questions that are important for them to discuss during this phase. It's important for them to ask these questions, like, do you want to have children? One of my sons' blessing broke after many years because his wife decided she didn't want to have children. And then there were more complications than that, but so that blessing broke. It's very, very sad. But these are important questions to ask. How many children do you want? You know, those kinds of things. And those don't have to be in the first few weeks, but eventually those are the kinds of questions that need to be discussed. So there's tools that are available to help with these questions. Flag Pages, which is on the Blessing for You website, the bcmatching.org. There is a link to do what they call the Flag Pages. Myers-Briggs, these are personality evaluation programs that can be helpful to understand their character and what could be a good potential match. I don't really pay a lot of attention to those. I always compare them just to get an idea, but they can be good indicators of potential matches. So Flag Pages, Myers-Briggs, etc., can be helpful. And in a communication phase, it's important to be aware of red flags, things that just don't sit right. That maybe there's a lack of trust or somebody lied. You know, it's important to consider those things, because an honest relationship is so important to develop. A person cannot give their heart to someone until they can trust them. You all know that. So it's important that they build trust and honesty and integrity in communication as they get to know each other. So parents and matching supporters, very important to keep in touch with them just to see where they're at, how things are going, are you doing okay? Not to push, but to just support and be there. So this is a courtship, and we do encourage a 7-month communication period. And one thing of note is one of the things that I recommend is to do periods of 21 days. So in a communication phase, every 21 days, they can set conditions for the next 21 days. But most importantly, at the end of a 21-day period, a couple can talk with each other and evaluate that last 21-day period. So how did it go for you? Do you feel that we learned things about each other? Are there questions that you still have about me? Do you feel like we can continue into another 21-day period? And that way they can have an ongoing gauge and evaluation of where they're at in their relationship as they build it together. And if you look at a 21-day period, 10 of those 21-day periods equals 7 months. So build a friendship, build a relationship, work together to get to know each other. And one thing that's critically important is to meet at least one time in person. I know one sister and brother, this couple communicated for 2 years over Zoom, and I don't know what they used, WhatsApp, whatever it was. For 2 years they communicated, and they felt great. Finally, when they actually met face to face, they realized there was no way it was going to work for them. So after 2 years of communicating without actually meeting, when they finally met, it didn't. I know many examples like that, especially during COVID. We had those issues, right? Where it was difficult sometimes for couples to meet physically. But this is so important. Maybe more important than the 7 months of communication. So, and the 7 months, by the way, is not just a good spiritual number. It is that, right? But sociological studies show that in communicating with another person, after 4 to 5 months, their true character is more and more revealed. So if they're trying to hide something, an addiction or I hate to say a criminal background, but some serious mistake that they've made in the past, after 4 to 5 months, those secrets tend to come out. So that's why we encourage candidates to take a good period of time, 6, 7 months, to get to know each other, build a relationship of absolute trust, integrity, and honesty. And it's important that they exercise complete and full and honest disclosure. In other words, they share with each other mistakes that they've made or bad habits, addictions that they have or are working on, mistakes that they've made in the past. Many times, especially when our candidates receive special grace for a sin or a mistake they've made in the past, many times they're told, don't talk about it. Don't tell your spouse, your match. Don't tell anybody. You are 100% forgiven. Well, it's true that they are 100% forgiven if they receive the special grace and fulfill the conditions that true parents establish for that special grace forgiveness. They are 100% restored. But they remember, and there are other people that probably are aware that they had a relationship or made this mistake. And if it gets back to their spouse after this commitment, if they've hidden something, the trust is violated and very difficult to restore. And I'm sure that all of you have seen situations like that where there wasn't honesty or integrity in building a relationship, and therefore a blessing broke because there was something that was hidden that came out later. So it's very, very important. And of course, during the purity interview, that is really important for them to unburden their heart, to relieve themselves of anything they feel burdensome or guilty. So during the purity interview, of course, we expect and hope and pray that they'll be completely honest, but also in building a relationship, it's really important to build trust. So during this communication phase, they can say no at any time if they really feel that it's not going to work out. And if they do that, a couple of things that are important. First of all, they should talk to parents or you as a matching supporter and just express what it is that's the problem. Sometimes it's a simple miscommunication that has caused issues, and it can be clarified and worked out so that that relationship can continue to grow and build. But it's also important for them to be able to share so they can open their heart and really relieve themselves of whatever burden or challenge. So if they feel like they just can't do it, it's important that they share with you or the parents to explain why and how are they feeling. And also a circumstance could perhaps be avoided in the future, in a future matching. So if a candidate feels they just can't communicate, they just can't do it, it's just not going to work out, it can be best for parents to reach out to the other parents and say, our family feels like this is not going to be the best match for our children, so we would like to end the communication phase. A matching supporter can do that as well, but ideally we want to protect the son or daughter, and we don't want to put the burden on them to communicate that. Also, we don't want to say, we want this to be a team, a family effort process. So we as parents want to support our candidates in expressing our family feels, not my candidate, not my son or daughter, but our family feels this is not the best match. So we don't have to be judgmental or accusing or anything. We should not, in fact, be, right? We're all sons and daughters and family. So, but one thing that's important is that the candidate and the family realizes it's not a failure. If a matching discussion does not become a match, it's not a failure. They can learn from that and grow from that, and they will, for sure. So if their hearts are hurt, it's important they take time to heal, to recover, and then when they're ready, revise their matching plan and begin again. So on the other hand, if candidates have decided, yes, we can be matched, let's do this, then they can plan the commitment ceremony. In the communication phase, physical closeness can be a real challenge. So please encourage your families and candidates to be very wise. You can tell them, I trust you 100%. And hopefully you're being honest. Hopefully you do trust them. But you can also share with them, how difficult it can be when you're physically together, that you may be tempted to do something, have a sexual relationship even, that is really not appropriate. So please be aware of these challenges and be cautious in your building your relationship. So holding hands might be appropriate. Hugging to greet their potential match could be appropriate. It depends on the custom, depends on the family, right? So we have to be sensitive to that. It is not appropriate to be kissing on the lips. Now, sometimes kissing on the cheek is a way of greeting, right? And that's a custom that is acceptable. So that's not, as long as it's not a sexual kind of contact. Kissing on the lips is not appropriate. Any sexual contact, laying down together, going to a movie together as a couple, those things can be very challenging for couples to maintain sexual purity and integrity. So one question that can be helpful is, what will you be proud to tell your children about your relationship when you are getting to know each other? What will you be able to tell your children? Because that kind of removes it from the emotional aspect, their desire, which may not be appropriate, and allows their will to dominate, to take over, and their intellect to be subjective. Okay, so that can be very helpful. Encourage them to make vertical conditions, offer conditions of unity and prayer. Encourage parents to take time to listen. And this listening, we'll talk later today about listening. That is so important. And once again, I'd like to point out that sometimes we as parents are not good listeners to our children, or maybe to someone else, anyone else either. But taking time to listen is so important. And of course, never giving up. So parents, this is their decision. Encourage the candidates and allow them to take responsibility. This is, if the parents make the decision, there is a reasonable chance that the blessing that relationship will not be successful. It will not last. Candidates need to take ownership of the process. So if just a couple of quick points, and we'll finish up this part of the program. Be sure to answer if someone contacts you about or a family about a possible matching, be sure to answer them within 3 days. This is the guideline that we like to encourage. That doesn't mean yes or no. It might. It could be that you look at their profile and right away you realize it's not going to work. You can respond and say, really sorry, we don't feel this would be the best match for our son or our daughter. But most often it takes more than 3 days to decide, but they should respond and say, thank you. Thank you for contacting us. Please allow us to take 7 days to pray. Please allow us to take these 7 days to reflect on it, and we will get back to you. So it's very important to respond, and to respond quickly. And then once a conversation begins, only one candidate at a time. And we shouldn't be talking with more than one family at a time. When families begin communicating, that's a commitment that they need to fulfill and complete before moving on to another family. So one family at a time. When a process ends, it's important to be sensitive to the other family and to communicate it really, really clearly. Communicate honestly and respectfully, and you can say, as I've mentioned before, we do not feel this is the best match for our children, so we would like to end this communication period. So you don't have to make excuses or list reasons. You may have them, but there always is something, right? But we don't want others to feel judged or criticized. So it's important to be very sensitive. Before introducing children, parents should confirm with the other family that their child will attend the cosmic blessing ceremony hosted by true parents. In other words, by true mother. And this is not as much a problem as it was a few years ago when we had some divisions, some schisms, I guess, from our movement, where some of the blessed children set up their own organizations. But it's really important when our children are building a relationship that they both have the same cosmic blessing ceremony hosted by true parents. And however that is clarified, that's very, very important, right? Also, sometimes we receive spiritual revelations. We'll have a dream or a vision. We might be in Changpyong and the spirit world says, this is the name of your match, or this is the name of your son's match. Go, match them. But we don't know for sure that that's a principled guidance. We don't know for sure, do we, that it comes from True Father or from God? We don't know. I don't think any of us know that. Maybe some of you do. But it's very important that we still take responsibility. It might be from heaven. It might be ideal. might be heaven's, God's ideal match, but it's still important that we, parents, spiritual children, spiritual parents, that we take responsibility to be sure that the candidates get to know each other and communicate honestly and sincerely and take responsibility for it. Don't let spirit world take responsibility. It's important that we do that. So acknowledge spirit world. Of course, I'm not saying ignore them. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying we still need to be responsible. So if they decide to move forward, they can do a commitment ceremony, and we won't talk a lot about that today just because of time. But one thing that's important is that the couple can write their vows and they can have a big ceremony, or they can just have a private ceremony, but they do need to have a photograph as a couple, and they need to fill out the matching report forms and submit them to their respective BFD. So the BFD in each country or each region needs to be aware and receive the matching report, right? So you probably all are aware of how that works in your particular subregion. And then of course you can broadcast it to the world. So this is what we tell parents: be sensitive to the candidates, but it's exciting news, right? And then they can prepare for the blessing. But once again, we'll end here just because of time. And we want to encourage our young people to have happy and successful matches and blessings. And so here are some resources, and I can email this program to Reverend Bougre, and you can get it from him if you'd like, with all the links to these various resources. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope I didn't put too many of you to sleep, and thank you for your interest and your willingness to become matching supporters and to help our families and our singles in this. And I hope that this program has been successful or helpful for you today, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, right? So I think we probably have some, I don't know if there are questions.
Okay. So once again, thank you for your investment in this second part, Mr. Abel-Seth. But according to our program, we have a video. I'm not sure if we should still put it, or we should just continue to the question and answer. How do you see it?
It's up to Reverend Bougre. I would recommend that we have some questions now and then the video later. But whatever Reverend Bougre and whatever you feel is appropriate, I'm okay either way.
Okay.
So will you show that video, or would you like me to show it? You have the link, I think, right?
Yes, I actually have it. I just want to ask Reverend Bougre what he feels about it.
Sure.
But actually, he's in the interpretation. Let me just remove the interpretation real quick. Okay, Reverend Bougre.
Oui, je suis là.
Donc, la suite, les questions-réponses ou bien la vidéo?
Oh, bon. Je pense qu'on peut regarder la vidéo pendant quelques temps, et puis après ça, maintenant, comme ça, quand on rentre dans les questions-réponses, parce que parfois les questions-réponses, ça prend aussi beaucoup de temps.
Okay,
Donc, il est bon de regarder un bout de la vidéo, et puis voilà.
Okay.
Voilà.
Okay. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Abel-Seth, you can share the video, please.
Okay, and then after the video, we do have one more presentation, which is a little bit shorter than what we've gone through now, but it's probably good to have a bit of a break, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let
And
me
also,
pull up.
he's saying it's not really necessary to share all the content of the video, but maybe something like 21 minutes.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's okay. Sure. Yeah, it's a little bit of a longer video. It has a lot of great content, but let me just pull it up. Give me just a minute here.
Okay.
Donc, juste il faut me établir là.
Okay. Okay, so this video was prepared by High Noon, and sorry, you don't see it yet, do you? Just a second here.
Oh, we can see actually.
Oh, you can see it. Okay, good. Okay, so we just need to begin it. Let me know
Hello,
how.
everybody. Welcome to this presentation. My name is Andrew Love, and pardon me for these ridiculous glasses, but it is a little bit late at night, and if I don't wear these, I probably won't sleep. And we all know that I need to sleep, right? So I've been invited to give this talk. I've been giving similar talks to this in various iterations around, I want to say the world, but that sounds pretentious, but it has kind of been, in many countries. And it's, the topic is pornography. And it's something that I never thought I'd be talking about in my life. But then apparently that's all I've been talking about for the past 6 or so years on behalf of High Noon. So I'm here representing High Noon, an organization that I've been working for since 2016. And we deal with many issues, especially in particular about sex. And the origin of our organization was really talking about pornography because it's the topic that impacts everybody, and yet few people ever hear it spoken in the light of day. And that's what we're all about, is bringing all of our shadows out into the light and talking about them. That's the only way to get beyond them, is to work through them, not by hiding them, not by pretending they don't exist, blah blah blah, but by talking about them, working through them. So I was giving a talk that little old ladies in Korea have heard similar versions of, and South America, all over the world. And the reason why it's so important is because intuitively all of us know this to be deeply true, and yet it's still a tough pill to swallow, because the breadth of the problem is, the scope of it is very intimidating. It can sound intimidating, but we all actually have impact. This is one really important point, that any little piece of a machine impacts the entire machine, and we are a part of the human body. And so if we are doing well, then the human body is doing better than it was when we weren't. So I encourage you, as much as this information can come off sounding heavy, just understand that it ends well, so long as you determine to deal with it and be a part of the solution, okay? So I'm going to start to share my screen. Here we go. Here we go. This is a working title, by the way. It's why it's worth opting out of PMO. PMO, incidentally, is porn, masturbation, orgasm. It means, it's like a code word for watching pornography, masturbating, having orgasms by yourself. And incidentally, and quite hilariously, before we were High Noon, we were Pure Mind Online. And if you can understand why we changed our name, that factored into it. It wasn't the entire reason, but you probably not the best initials for an organization fighting PMO is PMO. Maybe it's a good way to restore it. Who knows? But now we're High Noon officially. So here we go. Here's kind of a slogan from the addiction circles that we hang out in. That is, the opposite of addiction is not being addicted to something. It's connection, feeling deep connection. This is a really important point. Please write this down if you can. I was about to say tattoo it. Don't tattoo it. But remember this, because a lot of people, when they're seeking to get rid of a bad habit or even an addiction, they think that getting rid of this problem in their life will resolve their issues, when in fact it's just removing the Band-Aid that you've put on top of a wound. It's much more important to deal with the wound itself, and that is through connection. Next, Hainun is a place without shadows. Hainun is a concept. We got the word from a concept which originated from true parents, in particular true father back in the day. And he talked a lot about this era of Hainun, where, if you can imagine, it's the time of day when there are no shadows, especially in a place like Las Vegas or whatever. There are no shadows because the sun is right above your head. There's nowhere for the shadows to go. And that's where we want to be, metaphorically speaking, with the truth above our heads, so that we have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, because we are who we say we are. We're not perfect. And when we make mistakes, we own up to them, we deal with them, we process them, and we move on, right? So again, to summarize the talk that I haven't yet given, I could basically do it in these two quotes, which is, the opposite of addiction is connection. So here's the destination. The destination where we want to go is connection. And also, we want to live a life where we have nothing to hide, where we wear our mistakes on our sleeves and we say, this is part of what got me here, okay? So let's get into part one, which is all about contact. So typically speaking, this is how, most families, most societies, and especially most religions have dealt with the topic of unwanted sexual stuff, especially pornography. Is like, I don't, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know. Can we just move on? Can we talk about the weather, sports, anything but this issue that's clearly in all of our lives, right? But in the absence of a conversation, there's only assumptions. There's only, you have to come to your own conclusions, which is never helpful because it lacks connection, right? And so empty space is still a place. So an empty space in a conversation will be filled with assumptions, with, okay, I'll find answers my own way. Mom and dad, you're not talking to me, I'll figure it out myself. My idiot friends in the locker room, they'll teach me about sex. My elder siblings who know nothing about it will teach me about it. The internet will teach me about it. And that's exactly where most people learn about sex, is not from the people who created you via sex, ideally through love, but rather through actors or actresses or lonely, sad people on the internet who don't know you, don't care about you, right? We're learning about sex from people who don't know us or care about us, which is taking away that connection, right? So we're learning about the mechanics of sex without understanding the inherent purpose thereof. Many people go their entire lives thinking that sex is this one-dimensional physical act of getting off, right? Of, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and that's it. And they don't understand that, well, what is the purpose of this act, right? And it's essential to understand that all areas of our life, especially the main areas of our life, have deep purposes, universal purposes, eternal purposes, right? So without recognizing these purposes, all we're left with is the mechanics. And that's what porn teaches us, really. It's just two people having sex. Do they love each other? They don't even know each other in most cases, right? It's never about love. It's never about honoring each other. It's just about two bodies or more or whatever rubbing up on each other, right? So it's kind of like the worst of us. The shadows of our society are educating the next generation in sex. The worst of us. We're showing our kids the worst of ourselves. And they're learning, what happens when a little kid is exposed to porn. That age is getting younger and younger all the time because phones are everywhere, 5G's everywhere. It's hard to ignore, right? So what happens when you're exposed to this stuff? You're left with this mixed bag of emotions and you have no way of coping with it. So your sexual experience growing up ends up just being this very confusing, very, impossible to understand series of secret moments, essentially. And so this is what happens, okay? Here on the right of my screen, I hope it's the right of your screen, are our hopes and our dreams, our ideals, the things that we are striving for in our life, the person that we want to be. And yet, a lot of times, because of pornography, we are left with this area of our life, sexuality especially, that's taking us in the opposite direction. It doesn't bring us feelings of joy and pride. It leaves us feeling confused and alone. And it brings us to a place of shame. And when you're young and you don't have a support system and nobody to talk to, then you cannot deal with this by yourself. It's not that we're not meant to. We were never meant to deal with these emotions by ourselves. So what are we left with? Well, we're left with either this burden of shame or we learn how to escape our emotions. And what is the greatest escape ever? Porn, incidentally. It's like the, what's it called? When somebody falls in love with their captor. Yeah, I forget the name of it. Of course, when I need it the most. Oh my God. Anyway, Stockholm Syndrome. Thank you, God. You just gave that to me. Stockholm Syndrome is when somebody kidnaps you and you fall in love with your kidnapper kind of thing. That's what porn is people end up going to the very place that brings them to their shame, because it also brings them their greatest feeling of comfort, because now they're escaping life, right? And this leads to a whole lot of conflict, internal conflict. I want to be this person, but I actually live like this part of my life. and you can't live like that for too long. Okay. Here's a quote from a young person. We have so many testimonies. I don't even know how many, but I'm highly addicted to pornography. I started around the age of 11. My parents discovered me using porn twice. Since then, my hiding tactics have improved, which allowed me to get deeper into it. I attended some purity workshops, but the sharing never reached far enough to discuss pornography. I wish I had the courage and the determination to share this with my parents. My parents would probably help me and be happy that I shared with them, but I'm always worried about disappointing them. And anywhere I go, I somehow manage to access porn and masturbate. I wish I could share this with somebody personally, right? Very common, right? I'm dealing with all this stuff. I would love to share with people, but I'm too afraid. This one is, I grew up in a country where it is not really safe to play outside. I would stay inside the building every day. I found a way to relieve stress through porn. I think I was looking for love too, as my parents are missionaries, and they would be outside working. After I got addicted to porn and masturbation, I would masturbate every day 2 to 3 times. Again, escapism, right? I want love. I'll settle for the bodily emotions of temporary joy and elation without any connection, without any real stuff, any real transaction. I want to talk about purity real quick, okay? Now, Purity 1.0, the way that it was taught originally, in our movement, but also, in Christian circles, was like, there's a series of don'ts, right? Which is don't kiss, don't hold hands, don't spend too much time with the opposite sex, don't have sex, obviously, right? Don't watch porn, don't ever, never, ever don't, right? It's like this thing that's emblazoned in you where you definitely know what you shouldn't do. It's clear. Sometimes you don't know why, but it's really made clear in this worldview that all this stuff is dangerous, don't mess with it. The problem with this is that it's not really good preparation for relationships, right? Because by the time you get yourself into a relationship, you're terrified because this thing that you've been dreading your whole life, now that you're, say, married, you're now supposed to do. Do you think you have some baggage? Most likely, right? And so this was a time and a place, and there was use for it. It was helpful. This is not to denigrate that, but it was clearly in need of an evolution, of an upgrade, right? Which is what 2.0 is all about, okay? And Purity 2.0 is really all the do's. How to build healthy habits, right? How to keep your pure heart by thinking right and feeling right, the way that you would like to, right? How to build healthy relationships with people of both sexes, right? Your brothers and your sisters. That's a very important part of life, right? How to be comfortable in your own skin so that you stop trying to escape your life. How to channel your sexual energy into building something beautiful and powerful instead of squandering it through porn and masturbation. We have this, so I can't get too into it. There's time and space that I'm contending with presently, but I've been talking to a lot of young people these days on this subject in particular. I'm very passionate about it. It's when you're young and single is the perfect time to give birth to something, give birth to a side hustle, a business, a passion, a hobby, something that really captivates you, something that you can add to every single day, and it's growing in its power and its potential, just like kind of like Geppetto did with Pinocchio, right? Maybe that's a metaphor, who knows? But the point is that instead of you have all this energy and this desire to want to connect with people, and it's good to build healthy relationships, but there's also this secret part of your heart that's really reserved for like intimate love. It's the third realm of love, right? Which is the spousal. And if you aren't in a relationship, then what are you supposed to do with that energy? Well, great practice is to become devoted, first of all, to yourself and to your ideals, and also to something that you're creating. It's so important. So when you pour yourself into something, you really start to see the value in it, and it brings something out of you that nothing else can. I can't say it enough. Okay. And how to align your sexual energy with Heavenly Parent, with God, like how to practice never leaving God out of any aspect of your life, especially sexuality. Okay. So purity is actually like a garden. It requires daily maintenance, hourly maintenance, minute by minute maintenance. Like a lot of people might say, well, I've never kissed anybody, I've never watched porn, so therefore I'm pure. I wouldn't say so. Do you resent people? That's not really a pure heart. If you sit and say, I'm so pure, why isn't everybody like me? Right? That's kind of not the purest of intentions when you're around people to judge them and compare, right? Purity is really a state of being, mind, heart, spirit, body, of really taking care of yourself so that you're giving the best of yourself to this world. It's really not easy. It requires, again, minute by minute monitoring maintenance. So energy is a state that you need to create. You can't see that, right? Which is mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And I don't have enough time to really get into this, but this is really like if you're channeling, say you're not doing all these things, that's a fantastic start. I'm not watching porn. I'm not spending all my time masturbating. You know, I'm not doing these things. Great. But then what are you doing? You're learning how to use your mind for greatness, training it to do great things. You're training your body to overcome its limitations spiritually, learning how to give even when you don't want to, even learning how to connect with people that are difficult to understand, and emotionally learning how to love the unlovable. It's such great practice for relationships. This is all putting you ahead of the game so that you're an incredible, eligible bachelor or bachelorette for your potential spouse. Okay. So life isn't about avoiding disasters. It's about co-creating fulfillment with Heavenly Parent. Okay. So shame is often, associated with religion because religion has ideals. It has, a clear goal in mind. We want to be like this. And if you're not like this, then it's hard to fit in. And that's why a lot of people end up, when they have an addiction, end up leaving their faith because they feel like there's no place for me. And so our society now is very much in the mindset of let's justify everything. If I like it, then therefore it has to be good, right? And you cannot build a society based off of shame or justification. It's not scalable. Everything falls apart eventually. The only way is, living in the liberation of the high noon, which is to live in congruence with your ideals and getting help when you stray. Oh, I'm not living up to my ideals. Who do I call? Instead of how do I hide this, right? So let's talk about masturbation real quick, okay? Because this topic always comes up whenever we give talks, and we just decided to talk about it to save everybody the time and energy of wondering about this question. Because most people view this as very black and white. The questions are always, is it evil to masturbate? Is it good? Can I? Can't I? It's really people want to know if they should be ashamed, shame, or if they can be justified in their actions. They want to know, should I hate myself? Should I feel fine and say, see, I was right, right? Again, childish. It's the wrong question is the thing. After we fielded this and after we've talked a lot about it in the High Noon staff, we realized this is fundamentally the wrong question. A much better question is, what is the purpose of this sexual organ? And I'm telling you, everybody, if you're going through the matching blessing, then ideally you are well-versed in True Parents' words, but we are in a unique position as a movement to have this wealth of information about the sexual organs because True Father talked about them relentlessly, right? Check it out. Wait, he said, God's ideal of creation is to establish absolute couples. Absolute couples are established when they live not for themselves, but for each other based on the absolute sexual organs. They came into being for the creation. Each was created for the sake of the other, not for themselves. Man was endowed with his sexual organ for the sake of the woman. The female sexual organ exists for the sake of the man. This can sound really high level, but when you actually wrestle with this concept and understand that your sexual organ, your genitals, your heavenly palaces, whatever you want to call them, they are actually not yours. You're the gatekeeper for somebody else. This is like your gift to somebody if you've treated it well. It's also your curse to somebody if you give them like all sorts of baggage with it, all sorts of confusion with it, right? That's why learning how to build sexual integrity is super important because then your sexuality becomes a gift for another person, right? So really we're the caretakers of these things for the sake of somebody else. It's really deep. And like, I've known so many couples, old and young alike, who live like this. And it's amazing. Like, I don't do anything, honestly speaking, not to get too graphic, but I never, like, I know that this is my wife. So we always have a conversation whenever, and it's so healthy because it's like, at the end of the day, I'm just holding this thing for her. It's like, not mine, right? And that's gotten me out of a lot of trouble because of this. I'm not entitled. I don't have an entitled mindset, right? So anyway, I'll move on. So we need to really understand that the body is merely is a vessel. We worship the body in our materialist society because we don't really value the soul or the heart, right? But it's just a vessel at the end of the day. The heavenly order of lovemaking is that two minds come together, right? You have your mind and it's under your control because you've trained it, you've disciplined it, and your heart is able to care about another person instead of just being needy and, hey, I need you, can you, but instead being like, how are you? Can I help you? Can I make you happy, right? And then your spirit, this is supposed to be a spirit. There's no pictures of the spirit that are, sufficient, but this is the spirit, two spirits that you've disciplined your spirit to serve somebody else, to serve through your body. But all of these things first and last is your body, right? You can tell that the opposite is true in our world where it starts with the body and these guys are never really invited, right? Our heart, maybe sometimes, but our mind is completely possessed by our body. Our body is, mind body unity, no such thing. No way, man. And our spirit is just asleep during that whole transaction. So heavenly sexuality is about the transference of the best of each other, okay? And it's where two become one. Channel Guk, the word Channel Guk is where two become one, right? It's when husband and wife become one. And God's right at the center. Three object purpose, so beautiful, so beautiful. God in full form. So the masturbation model of the world is that sex is just hormonal. I'm horny, right? That's what a lot of people who don't understand emotion, they don't understand spirituality, they just, I'm horny. Well, no, that just means your body's in charge, okay? You can change that, right? It's very emotional. If you want an example, I love this example. Late at night, you're watching something you probably shouldn't watch on your computer or your phone, and you're like, oh, I'm feeling very sexual, feeling horny. And then all of a sudden you see a commercial of a war in some part of the world or starving children over there. Guess what? You don't feel so horny anymore. You know why? Because it's emotional. You're emotional, your heartstrings are being pulled, basically. Second thing is sex leads to isolation rather than connection in the masturbation model, in the porn model. And we end up using sex as a tool of avoidance rather than a necessary means of connection. It's a cementing of a relationship. That's what it's intended for, but not in the way that it's expressed in our present society, okay? So at the end of the day, your sexuality isn't even about you. It's about God and your spouse, and you're a vessel for that, for connecting your spouse with God and for connecting God with your spouse. That's such a great honor, right? Instead of, using somebody's body for your own pleasure. Completely different category of life, okay? So let's talk about how porn impacts relationships, okay? This is a cartoon that we had drawn up for us. We used to make these kind of images for social media, but this is really what porn does in a nutshell. You get these images in your head and you can't get them out. There's no known way to locate a memory and delete it, regardless of what the movie said. That was like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, right? They have not done that. They can't do that. So what happens is we bring these concepts into the bedroom with us when we're in a relationship. We're comparing our spouse to the other person. We start saying, hey, can we do this? And you start copying somebody else. And it never works because you're not somebody else. You're you. You're meant to create something unique, right? Doesn't mean you can't learn from other people. You can talk to aunts and uncles, people that you trust. And trust me, heavenly people have a lot to say about sex. Just talk to, I don't want to name names. There's a lot of good people. Start digging in our community. It's such a great, invigorating conversation to have a talk about sex where God is present. There's nothing like it. It doesn't feel dirty. It doesn't feel shameful. It feels beautiful, okay? But that's not what happens with porn. Porn teaches us to compare and to try and emulate monkey see, monkey do, okay? So it's an impact on intimacy, which is the goal of sex. Remember, is closeness, connection. That's intimacy. It focuses on the body of somebody else rather than their heart and soul. We don't care. When we're possessed by a desire to want to fulfill our own needs, we don't care about other people. We disregard their safety, their well-being, their likes, their hopes, their dreams. We don't care about any of it. Think about the last time you saw porn, whether you had any care in the world about what that person was going through. You didn't, because you were possessed by selfish needs. That's what porn trains us to be. Again, don't feel ashamed. Be aware. Understand what's going on, the phenomenon. Porn becomes like a third person in a relationship because instead of dealing with the fight that you're having or the issue that's taking place in the relationship, you're escaping and finding solace in some other third party. And though it's on a phone, it still can feel like deep betrayal on the other spouse, on behalf of the other spouse. And it habituates dealing with like plugging into fantasy rather than resolution, right? Escaping rather than resolution. And sex becomes about escaping issues rather than connecting and learning because it never says no, which is connected. But there's something that humans don't like in our immature state, which is the word no, right? And, if you ever want to go, you can listen to the High Noon podcast, shout out. But I did a lengthy podcast with my wife talking about, how difficult it was after our second child. She was in no position to be sexually intimate or intimate in any way, shape, or form. And I became very needy. And I got no all day long. Like not just sexually, but also sexually, but it was really hard. I needed to find yeses elsewhere because if I just started escaping, my whole life would have fallen apart. So I needed to find ways of yes from God. Hey, I still love you. I know your wife is struggling right now. I still love you, right? Yes.
Hi, everyone. So I hope that has been helpful. This is about halfway through that video. I'm sure that we can make it available for you, but I also understand that the French translation it didn't work out. So just briefly, this talk is presented by highnoon.org, and it's talking about how important sexual intimacy is in our relationships. And we all know that it was the fall, a fallen sexual relationship, which caused all of the problems that we are living with and having to restore today. So healthy sex is really, really important. And pornography is one of the tools that evil that Satan has used to destroy healthy, happy sexual relationships. Many of us have had sexual addiction, addiction to pornography or other things that really damage our intimate relationships. And so Andrew Love is trying to explain in this video that what Father teaches, what true parents have taught us, is that our sexual organ belongs to our spouse. It's not mine, it belongs to my spouse. And therefore, I should treat it with respect and honor, right? I want it to be the best gift that I can give to my spouse. So Andrew goes on to talk about how billions of dollars are made by companies and individuals that sell sex, sell pornography, billions of dollars. And it's ultimately evil, just so wrong. So many of us encounter difficulties with addiction to pornography or other addictions. And we know how difficult it is to overcome, to stop bad habits, or especially to break an addiction. And pornography is as addictive as heroin or cocaine. I talked earlier today about the epigenetics and how when we do something over and over and over, it creates what are called neural pathways in the brain. So it makes it very difficult to break bad habits and especially addictions. So highnoon.org is an organization which is part of our movement that is committed to supporting sexual integrity and helping individuals and couples overcome sexual addiction or other sexual issues. So it's very important. One of the things that Andrew pointed out in this video is that we tend to avoid it. Sometimes we're ashamed to talk about it. It's something we want to just, he calls it sweeping it under the rug. In other words, hide it, and nobody will find out. But that doesn't resolve the problem. So I encourage you, when you are connecting with your candidates and your families, that you talk to them about pornography and about sexual issues and connect them, if necessary, to highnoon.org. You can go to that website and see what's there. There is support for individuals. There are groups that are available, educational programs that are available to help all of us, and especially our singles who are preparing for the Matching and Blessing, to overcome any kind of sexual challenge that they may have. And sometimes we know that our candidates are ashamed to talk about it. And we want to encourage them to share in an honest, confidential way when they do the purity interview, and also when they connect with High Noon to help them to overcome any sexual problem, especially pornography. The reason, of course, is that a person who has a pornography addiction has a very difficult time to have a meaningful sexual relationship with their spouse. And sometimes it's ladies as well are affected by this, and our children are exposed. We can't avoid it in today's society. It's sad, but it's really true. So we really want parents to be honest with their children, children to be honest with their parents, and to know when a child comes to a parent and says, I have a problem, that they won't be punished. They won't be punished because they made a mistake, or they're addicted, or they're watching pornography. We tend to try to hide what we do wrong. but with love and forgiveness, we can encourage our children and our candidates to be really honest and to build trust. And that will help them as they build a relationship with their eternal spouse, with their future match, so that they then know that they can be honest and forgiven and not rejected. So when someone has a problem, whether it's the fall or an addiction, our first responsibility, especially as matching supporters and as parents, is to love them unconditionally. God doesn't judge us, we judge ourselves. So I often encourage individuals to forgive themselves, because very often we know God will forgive us for our mistakes. Our spouse, our friends, our brothers and sisters, our pastors, they will forgive us if we take responsibility. But sometimes the most difficult challenge we have as individuals is to forgive myself. I know how terrible I am, right? So it's really, really important that our sons and daughters understand they are God's children. And when they're seeking their match, they are not the person that made a mistake or committed a sin. That is not who they are. They're God's children. And so this issue with pornography is very important for us to be aware of, to be sensitive to, and to realize that probably every one of our children after the age of 12 or 14, certainly in the teenage years, is exposed to some kind of pornography. So I just wanted you to be aware of how important it is, and I'm sure that Reverend Bougray can send this video. And if you want to go to High Noon, there are lots of videos and lots of support and information that's available. So thank you for your patience, and I hope this has been helpful.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Abel-Seth. Actually, before we go forward, I wanted to ask if you already, if this was the last presentation that you wanted to give before we end.
I do have one more presentation called Parent-Child Relationship that I think is important. And if we're still okay, are we still okay for time? I think the program, we still
Okay.
have, I think, another hour or something on the program if people can hang in.
Actually, no, not on the program. This is actually already the end. I'm not sure if this is possible to still share it or present it tomorrow. So we will see.
Okay, whatever you feel, whatever. Yes, either way. Yeah, whatever you deem is best, it's fine. I'm here to serve.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So, all right, everyone. The content is actually quite vast, and time definitely plays against us. What limits us to receive more. So once again, you are all invited to review this video from the BFD official YouTube channel and take even more notes. So thank you again, Mr. Abel-Seth, for taking your time, sharing with us these essential elements that can facilitate the education of young people to prepare properly to receive the blessing. So thank you again. So we will move forward, and this time we have to listen from Reverend Bougray first, who will share the announcement. So Reverend Bougray, if you're ready, please, the mic is yours.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there are maybe 1, 2, or 3 questions. Is it possible to take them?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, so if some have some questions, just 3 questions for today because the time is already there. If some have some questions, this is the time. If you don't have enough time, please. Questions? S'il y a des gens qui ont des questions, je crois que c'est aussi le moment. Hein. On va prendre 3 questions. Le conférencier va prendre 3 questions. No question. Okay. If after you have some question, you can take note and tomorrow you can ask to the... Oh, there is one hand somewhere. Jinsun, you have the lead. Guide the
Okay.
question.
HQ Quilu, you can open your mic and ask your question.
Merci beaucoup, cher modérateur, de m'avoir ôté la parole. Bonsoir, cher BFD, au niveau de l'Afrique. Bonsoir à tous les responsables, parents comme jeunes ici présents. Premièrement, je tiens à remercier le conférencier de sa prestation, bien que la conférence était vraiment en anglais. Et l'anglais nous semble vraiment difficile à comprendre. Mais ce qui m'a tiré beaucoup plus à poser cette question, c'est dans la seconde partie où on a essayé de nous montrer une vidéo. Ma question se résume ainsi. C'est vrai, nous aujourd'hui, nous sommes jeunes, parfois on n'arrive pas à s'abstenir. Dans des cas, surtout si vous avez eu la bénédiction, vous avez commencé la vie de famille, que votre partenaire est en voyage, peut-être de quelques mois ou des années, en quoi la pornographie est importante dans cet aspect. Est-ce que la pornographie serait importante au cas où votre partenaire a un voyage d'une année ou de quelques mois? C'est ça vraiment qui m'a tiré beaucoup plus à poser cette question.
OK. Donc, juste pour clarifier la question, est-ce que vous êtes en train de dire si le partenaire est en voyage, l'un des deux partenaires, est-ce que ce serait bon de se livrer à la pornographie? Est-ce que c'est ça la question? Vous pouvez ouvrir votre micro et clarifier d'abord.
Oui, c'est ça la question. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, okay. So, Mr. Abelset, I will translate. So he's asking, being a young man or a young woman depends on the couple. If one of the partner is away for maybe 1 year, 6 months, or maybe more, isn't it okay to watch porn? So this is the question.
The short answer is no. Porn can be very addictive, but when you're watching pornography, you're watching someone's daughter or son. And they too are God's son and daughter, and very often they are enslaved. They are made to perform sexual acts. So it's very terrible for them. But also in watching pornography, it really is potentially very addictive. And so it's not acceptable. I know it's very difficult. I understand if your spouse is away and you don't have a normal sexual relationship for a good period of time. But that's an opportunity for you to grow and to discipline yourself. I know it's not easy, but I know it can be done. When my wife and I've never shared this before, but when my wife and I were I don't think we've had children. Maybe we had some children, but when True Father went to prison for over a year, we committed to not having a sexual relationship because we knew that Father was imprisoned and we wanted to offer that condition. So I know it's difficult. I know it's, but but at the same time, God can guide you. And as Andrew was trying so hard to point out in this video, it's important to find healthy ways to channel your energy, not in masturbation, not in pornography, realizing that your sexual organ still belongs to your spouse, wherever he or she is, even when you're apart. So it's difficult, but that is the most wholesome and righteous way to try to deal with that separation.
Ok, Révérend Bouquet, je suppose que vous avez fait l'interprétation. Je vais juste poser la question au frère Kwilou. Est-ce que la réponse est satisfaisante?
Je n'ai rien écouté en anglais. Si possible, vous pouvez l'interpréter en français.
Mais la traduction a été faite, l'interprétation. Vous n'avez pas choisi, vous n'avez pas cliqué sur l'interprétation?
Non, j'ai choisi, mais il n'y a pas l'interprétation plutôt.
Ok, bon. Je vais faire un très court résumé de ce qu'il a expliqué parce que c'est assez important. Donc, premièrement, il commence par dire non, un non absolu. Que votre épouse ou votre partenaire soit loin pendant des années ou bien quelques mois, cela ne veut pas dire que l'on peut se laisser plonger dans la pornographie. Le sexe du moins, appartient au partenaire et à aucune autre personne. Parce que se lancer sur la pornographie, déjà, avant de parler de se détruire l'esprit, on est en train de regarder le corps d'un autre garçon, de la fille de quelqu'un ou bien du fils de quelqu'un, ce qui peut détruire, altérer notre mariage. Donc, la réponse est catégorique. C'est non, un non absolu. C'est un sacrifice qu'il faut accepter de pouvoir faire et de vivre avec et de pouvoir honorer en même temps nos vrais parents qui, eux, à cause de cette même pureté sexuelle, ont même été emprisonnés plusieurs fois. Et nous, qui sommes dans cette position de pouvoir les honorer, on ne peut pas se permettre de le faire afin de pouvoir sauver notre mariage. Donc voilà ce que comment je peux le résumer pour vous. J'espère que c'est compréhensible. Est-ce que la réponse est satisfaisante?
Ok, très satisfaisante vraiment. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous. OK. Donc, Révérend Begré,
Yeah.
je pense qu'il n'y a pas d'autres questions, donc je vais vous laisser le micro.
OK, merci beaucoup. Donc, je voulais vraiment que nous puissions, let us give a big hand to our lecturer today, John Abelset, coming from USA to give us this lecture today. And even the time is not okay for him there, but he's still here with us. And he will be here tomorrow also with us because this training is for 2 days. So you can use the same link. You can use the same link you receive to be here tomorrow. And for announcements, we have a PMC on the 22 and 23 of June. But for the form, we receive the form until 9 June, next Saturday. So if you have a form, this is the time to bring it to Africa HQ so that we can present it when the PMC will be okay for next 22 and 23 of June. Thank you. And maybe once again, John, thank you for giving us this lecture. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Reverend Bogre. So now, before we conclude, I would like to give the mic to Reverend Ledwaba, who also represents the regional president, to give the final words, the closing remarks. So, Reverend Ledwaba, if you can hear me, you have the floor.
Indeed, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Program Director. I think Reverend Bekri has said already, to thank our speaker today from the US. I want to add to that. Mr. Abelseth, in Africa in general, we never refer to our elders with their first name. So we struggle to say John. It's not very common. When we talk with our elders and with people we respect, we use the honorifics, Mr. So that's why even myself, I struggle to really use your first name. This is just what is culturally practiced in the whole continent. So we talk about the papas and the mamas. We never say John. It's very strange. Yeah, it's, when Reverend Oguri started, he said, when Father asked us to match, two parents directed us to match our children, he said we panicked. And he put it in the past tense. In fact, I want to suggest that we are still panicking. It's a very, very difficult and challenging proposition. And many of our families in Africa, we still believe that the matching of our children is the responsibility of two parents. And if not two parents, is the responsibility of the leader. We are not in North America, maybe in Europe as well, it's very common. But in Africa, it's still, a very, that's why this kind of talks are very, very important and precious. You spoke at length, and, I'm in that process myself. I've got a 24-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter. And so you were speaking to all of us, but it's like you're speaking to me, giving me advice. For instance, you are saying, parents should learn how to listen. And this is very, very important. Sometimes I treat my 24-year-old as an 8-year-old. And he said this to me sometimes. He says, Dad, I'm not 8. And that, and I think many of us as parents, we do that. The motivation is not bad, but it's simply we do not learn to graduate to make them partners. And of course, also what you said many, many times, which is very, very important, that, the candidate should own the process. I think we need to be reminded as parents going through this journey of matching our children. When there was reluctance among blessed families, in fact, I remember Father said, how long should I change your diapers? Father was saying, when we were struggling with the concept of matching our children, Father says, how long should I change your diapers? And I thought, wow. So, and I'm sure, there are many, many questions and many, almost like, how does one put it? Demands for guidance. We need this. And also I want to commend Reverend Bekri, as our BFD director in Africa, for holding these sessions, one would say on time, and when I say on time, it's relative because I'm looking at the blessing next year. Mother has already designated the 13th of April, 2025 as the day of the cosmic blessing. But even going forward, so I want to congratulate Reverend Bekri with his team in Africa HQ, but also once again, Mr. Abelseth, and as I said already, I hope you'll forgive me for referring to you as Mr. rather than John, that, we are really grateful. And let's walk this journey together. When we have got these platforms, then, there's a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So this is what we are doing, supporting each other, encouraging each other, and educating each other. I think it's really important. Of course, there are quite a few issues which are not necessarily controversial, but they raise eyebrows. For instance, the length of time of communication. we receive different, almost like guidance, but you said very clearly, these are guidelines. They are not absolutes. So, and they may not necessarily apply in each situation. So I like that as well. The fact that these are broad guidelines and they need to be treated as such. But in the main, this is really profound and very, very important. And of course, it was a little bit long in terms of, but I mean, when we started, we're at almost 97, meaning the connections. And I know some people are connecting. It's not just one person behind the screen. There are quite a few people. So this is really good. This is a very good indication. So I look forward to this kind of guidance. And in some cases, I think the horse has bolted. For instance, when you say, we need to set the example as husband and wife. Wow, I just said that we've got a 24-year-old in my house, the first one. And sometimes when we do Hunduke, we read father's words and he looks at dad and he looks at mom. And there is mom and dad, didn't you know this? So it's, yeah, but we are working this journey, as I say, and this is really helping us to really correct ourselves. In some cases, as I say, we are not very good examples. Just to give you an indication, in my sub-region in Africa, I'm in sub-region South. And not long ago, about 2 weeks ago, as we were doing looking at the data of our particularly second gen, we realized that, and Africa has got 5 sub-regions. In my sub-region alone, we have got 63 young men and 62 young women who are, for lack of a better word, are matching ready, and we are not moving on them. So this is 100 plus of our second gen. And so, yeah, we are in this journey, and we definitely, as I say, I can speak without any fear of contradiction, that it touched all of us, and it just, almost like confirmed what Reverend Nuguri gave us in the beginning, how special you are. And this is not to flatter you, but it's simply to deeply, deeply appreciate your insight, and also to say thank you very much for really dedicating yourself to really actualizing true parents' education by encouraging blessed families to take care of the blessing of our children. So on behalf of Reverend Kadima, who's our regional president, on behalf of the BFD in Africa, centering upon Reverend Bekhri, once again, in French, we say, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, John, and hope to see you tomorrow.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be amongst you. You are saints and sages and righteous men and women, and this is one of the most fulfilling responsibilities I've found, to become a matching supporter. So I'm really, really grateful and very humbled to be here with you today. So thank you all very, very much for being here, and God bless you. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yes. So, with these last precious words that we just heard, we conclude our program. Much has been invested for us despite the technical problems we have faced. So let's keep a heart of gratitude and pray that tomorrow it goes better. So let's now kindly invite Reverend Tati Toko to offer the closing prayer. So Reverend Tati Toko, if you are ready, you can open your mic. Oh, sorry, we cannot hear you.
On ne t'entend pas, Tati.
Ajo, Ajo, Ajo. Thank you, Reverend Tati, for the prayer. We couldn't hear it physically, but because we are spiritual people, I'm pretty sure we all have received it. So now let us offer the content of this program today by offering a last half bow to our Heavenly Parent and True Parents. 현재인 참프린게 캠베 바로 let us offer all glory to Heavenly Parent and True Parents. Yes, thank you. So for the last part of this program, we have to take a family picture. So I will invite everyone to open their cameras and to prepare their hearts. We will be doing the middle heart. And then I will take the picture. So please open the camera if you want to be part of the pictures. So the middle heart is this one. I won't be able to do it because I have to use my computer in order to take the picture. But please do not forget to smile. Smiling is also very important and healthy. Yes, very good. So at the count of 3, let's say Champomonim together. 1, 2, 3. Champomonim. Thank you so much. It's perfect. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Once again, thank you, Mr. Abethet. And thank you.
And see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. GMT. Same time, same link.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. See you tomorrow.